positions over the course of 4 years. That 4 years ago he wasn't for universal health care, now he is. Well, you've changed positions within 3 years on, a range of issues that you put forth when you ran for the Senate, and now you have changed. You said you would vote against the Patriot Act. You came to the Senate, you voted for it. You said that you would vote against funding for the Iraq War. You came to the Senate and you voted for $300 billion of it. So I just think it's fair for people to understand that many of the charges that have been leveled, not just at me, but also at Senator Edwards, are not totally, unrelated to the very record that you have. And you've said records matter, and I think that we should get into examining everybody's record.
I want John to be able to get in on this, but since this was directed at me, let me just make sure that I address this. First of all, I never said John was unelectable. Somebody asked me specifically what did I think was the difference between myself and John, and I pointed out some areas where I thought we had some differences.
And you said that he had changed positions, did you not?
And I did it because I thought that I'd been more consistent on those positions. I have no problem, Hillary, with you pointing out areas where you think we have differences. But on health care, for example, the reason that I mandate for children is because children do not have a choice. Adults do. And it's my belief that they will choose to have health care if it is affordable. Now, that's a perfectly legitimate policy difference for us to have. That is different from saying that I will refuse to cover or leave out a bunch of individuals. And the last point I just want to make on this, Charlie, is these are all good public servants, and everybody has great qualifications and has done good things. But what I think is important that we don't do is to try to distort each other's records as election day approaches here in New Hampshire, because what I think people of America are looking for are folks who are going to be straight about the issues and are going to be interested in solving problems and bringing people together. That's the reason I think we did so well in Iowa.
You've been very patient.
You have.
Thank you.
I appreciate
Thank you. No, you're welcome. You're more than welcome. Let me just say a quick word about this. Senator Obama and I have differences. We do. We have a difference about health care, which he and I have talked about before. We have a fundamental difference about the way you bring about change. But both of us are powerful voices for change. And I might add, we finished first and second in the Iowa caucus, I think in part as a result of that. Now, what I would say is this. Anytime you speak out powerfully for change, the forces of status quo attack. That's exactly what happens. It's fine to have a disagreement about health care. To say that Senator Obama is having a debate with himself from some Associated Press story, I think is just not, that's not the kind of discussion we should be having. I think that every time this happens, what will occur every time he speaks out for change, every time I fight for change, the forces of status quo are going to attack every single time. And what we have to remember, and this is the overarching issue here, because what we really need in New Hampshire and in future state primaries is we need an unfiltered debate between the agents of change about how we bring about that change, because we have differences about that. But the one thing I do not argue with him about is he believes deeply in change, and I believe deeply in change. And any time you're fighting for that, I mean, I didn't hear these kind of attacks from Senator Clinton when she was ahead. Now that she's not, we hear them. And any time you speak out for change, this is what happens.
Well, making change, wait a minute. I'm going to respond to this because obviously making change is not about what you believe. It's not about a speech you make. It is about working hard. There are 7,000 kids in New Hampshire who have health care because I helped the Children's Health Insurance Program. There are 2,700 National Guard and Reserve members who have access to health care because on a bipartisan basis, I pushed legislation through over the objection of the Pentagon, over the threat of a veto from President Bush. I want to make change, but I've already made change. I will continue to make change. I'm not just running on a promise of change. I'm running on 35 years of change. I'm running on having taken on the drug companies and the health insurance companies, taking on the oil companies. So, I think it is clear that what we need is somebody who can deliver change. And we don't need to be raising the false hopes of our country about what can be delivered. The best way to know what change I will produce is to look at the changes that I've already made.
Can I respond briefly to that?
I'll let you respond. In all fairness to Governor Jefferson. Well, I've been in